Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, would just seize some of Trump's properties in Westchester if for the remaining balance of that judgment. So he doesn't have enough campaign funds to satisfy any, a major part of that judgment, and so they're going to have to go to asset forfeitures probably.
Donald Trump's election fundraising is less than half of Joe Biden's. That's according to new figures from the Federal Election Commission. Trump's campaign told the commission it raised 10.9 million US dollars in February, compared to 21.3 million reported by the Biden campaign. I'm joined now by Daniel Lippman, who's the White House reporter at Politico in Washington. Daniel, good to have you back on the programme.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, always good to hear from you. I mean, when it comes to men measuring their electoral prospects, does the size of your war chest really count?
It definitely helps because it's it's a big media campaign. We have a country of 340 million Americans, and so the candidates can't reach and shake hands with every single voter, or even a small fraction of them. And so most people get their news via TV still. No offense to Times Radio, but and Americans watch TV ads, and that's how they get influenced in terms of who to vote for often.
And in terms of the reasons behind the discrepancy, because that's like 2-1, the money's going Biden's way. I mean, do we know why that is?
There's a couple reasons. Big Republican donors, wealthy Republicans, many of them are still against Trump. They think that he is a loudmouth and that he does not represent the Republican Party. And so they were backing Nikki Haley before she dropped out. And so there's hesitancy to give. There's also feeling like he's doing so well, so why do they need my money? And also they're worried that their money would go to pay for his legal fees, because a lot of the Super PAC money that had been spent last year, $50 million went in legal fees, and he's going to have a similar number, if not more, this year.
Yeah, I mean, there is the worry about the legal fees, but also the fact that he's struggling to make his bond, his 500 and whatever it is million bond that's been court imposed. I mean, the rules on finance and Super PAC, I mean, would he be allowed to reallocate funding from that's supposed to help a political campaign to put into a legal fight?
Well, I don't think he would do that. I think the donors would rebel, and his campaign advisors would say, "Hey, focus your money and your funds and attention on winning the election, so that you can get rid of all these charges, or as many of them as you can." And so, what is likely to happen is that Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, would just seize some of Trump's properties in Westchester if for the remaining balance of that judgment. So he doesn't have enough campaign funds to satisfy any, a major part of that judgment, and so they're going to have to go to asset forfeitures probably.
Yeah, in terms of who's giving the money, how sort of transparent is it in the States? Do we know who the individual funders are that donate to these super PACs?
In some, we often do, but it takes a long time for the FEC reports to get issued, so that we can actually see the groups and the money behind it. But there's a lot of issues in terms of dark money, groups that don't have to disclose their donors. There's different ways in the tax law you can get away from that. And ever since Citizens United, that Supreme Court ruling a number of years ago, that opened up the floodgates to corporate money and just big money, the cost of a campaign has really gone up across every level of government.
Yeah, the cost of a campaign has gone up, but one thing that Donald Trump has in his favour that other challengers, rather than incumbents, because even though he's been the president, he doesn't hold the office at the moment, the other challengers have, that is not a problem for him, is trying to get non-paid for coverage. I mean, he will open his mouth, he will put stuff out on social media. He is such a master of the kind of soundbite or saying the outrageous thing that he gets a lot of coverage. He has arguably a bigger microphone almost than Joe Biden in terms of his public pronouncements, doesn't he?
I think he does, and it's very hard for Biden to break through in terms of getting media coverage for the infrastructure bill, the law that happened, the CHIPS Act that is funding semiconductor chip plants, including that multi-billion-dollar plant in Arizona that he visited for Intel this week. And whereas Trump, when he opens his mouth, and he often dominates a news cycle, but often for the wrong reasons. And so that actually is a net negative for him when he says, oh, if he doesn't get elected, there's going to be a bloodbath. That does not get many of the voters that he needs as swing voters to his side. The Nikki Haley voters don't like that rhetoric.
Yeah, how are the polls looking at the moment?
The polls are still looking pretty good for Trump. He's up 8 points in Michigan, according to a recent poll, tied in Pennsylvania with Biden. I don't know what is going on in Arizona, but in Georgia, but still the wind is at the back of Donald Trump, and there's still a lot of concern among Democrats that do they have the strongest candidate if you have someone who can't communicate the message as strongly as Joe Biden does in terms of just the amount of events he can do because of his advanced age.
Indeed. Well, look, there's another story that was doing the rounds from the States that kind of caught my eye because it's the sort of headline that really you would only find in America, which is a white supremacist jailbreak. Tell me about this.
Yeah, so there was a jailbreak in, I believe it was Idaho. Is that of
Yeah, it
a
did say that. Yeah, it was one of the big jails in Idaho. Yeah.
yeah, and so this guy was serving, I think, maybe two murders that he had done, and he was caught and is being sent back to jail. But we have seen, he was a member of a white supremacist group called the Aryan Kingdom, or AK, that only has around 100 members, but these are not the type of people you want to invite to your dinner parties. And we have seen kind of an explosion in white supremacy and racist attacks and hate speech in the last 7-8 years. So that's very concerning in terms of a lot of people say the domestic terrorism threat is more worrisome than the foreign terrorism threat right now in America.
Yeah, indeed. A number of officers were caught in the shootout trying to round them up. Look, Daniel Lippman, thank you so much for joining us there. Daniel Lippman there. He's the White House reporter at Politico in Washington.